Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hi, this is Celine Williams hosting from Ontario for Canada's podcast. My guests today are Colin White and Josh Sheluk of Verecan Group. They say they're working on changing the way the financial industry serves Canadians. Welcome, Colin and Josh.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks for
Uh,
being here.
I should say thank you for being here. First and foremost, can we talk about saying you're working on changing the way the finance industry serves Canadians? I love that. Very tongue in cheek.
Well, it's fairly accurate. I mean, we are a group of misfits who didn't really fit in the traditional industry and had some ideas that we thought were worth exploring. And so we've organized ourselves and are out there trying to make a difference. And it's a big world, and things are pretty firmly entrenched, but we still believe that we have a ways to go, and there are improvements that can be made. And we're having a lot of fun along the way. We're having fun, right, Josh?
For sure, we're having fun. Maybe more fun than we should be having with it, as you can tell from the intro. But we all come from a background in a more traditional sense within the financial industry, in some way, shape, or form, all of us. And I think the reason we say that is because we've all seen things that we don't like with the traditional financial industry, and we've been pushing against that ever since. And I guess that we'll get into it more, but it culminated with our sort of relaunch of our business as Verecan a couple of years ago.
So let's start with, I love that, and I'm very excited to hear more about these misfits. So let's start with that, and I'd love for each of you to kind of tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey to getting to where you are today.
Chronologically, my journey started before Josh's, just because time. I came out of school as an accountant, and I liked numbers. I liked patterns. And early in my accounting career, I realized I didn't fit. I had too much personality, and I was trying to change too much, and that's not well rewarded in the accounting profession. So much to the horror of my mother, I quit a job as an accountant to go sell life insurance because that looked more interesting to me. That leap seemed odd at the time, and very early on, I realized I didn't completely fit in the industry that I just chosen to go try.
Mm.
Some combination of being stubborn and having ideas that things could be better made me stick with it. And so right out of the gate, I would be absolutely classified as a misfit. Anybody who looks at somebody who has got a promising career as a mid-level management accountant who gives that up to go sell life insurance, there's my badge. That's what got me into the misfit club. And then I grew it from there into dealing with securities back in the early 90s, back in the days before shares were traded on fractions rather than percentages, like way back when people wrote tickets and stuff like that. There was no computers, no cell phones. So I started, back then, and kind of rode the wave all the way through. I want to know, Josh, what gives you the audacity to call yourself a misfit? What's your badge of honor? I mean, did you quit a job as an accountant to go sell life insurance? I don't think that we did anything nearly that spectacular.
Do you think I'm a misfit, Colin?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was in evidence, but I apologize if I've offended.
Well, so I'm sure there's probably lots that would classify me as a misfit, but just to take you right back to the beginning for me, I was delivering papers when I was 12 years old and decided that I should invest in stocks at the encouragement of my dad. So maybe that's where I'm a misfit, because how many 12-year-olds are actually saving enough money from delivering papers that they can buy stocks? And I think from there, fortunately for me, the first experience was a positive one, and my money grew. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I can make money by not delivering papers. So that kind of grew into more than just a fascination. It became a bit of a passion for mine. And through university, taking a Bachelor of Commerce degree in economics and finance, kind of flourished from there. I took a couple co-op jobs in first insurance related business and then an investment related business. And that kind of solidified my passion and my interest in investing more specifically. And that led to when I left school, my first job was at a wealth management company, Dundee Wealth at the time, owned by Scotiabank at the time. And I guess that would be how the first time that Colin and I got a little bit closer together in terms of our, metaphorical proximity, I guess would be there.
So I love the very different, but also very aligned misfit stories that have been shared thus far. So thank you for sharing that. And how was it so you mentioned that you and Colin, that the two of you became aligned when you were working at Dundee. How was it that you two misfits found each other and decided to do something together?
Let me tell this part, Josh. I'll set you up to roll into where we actually came together, because it was, I think it's a cool story and it's a very mutual thing. So Josh is that young punk that was hired by back office that knew everything. And if you needed something solved, you called Josh. He was annoying, but he got it done. And he was annoying because he knew everything. And if he didn't know it, he would go find it. And
how
if you're
dare
on the wrong side of that, if you're on the wrong side of that, it was really annoying. But he became the guy that everybody in the firm turned to if they were working on something. And we would have conversations about various things that were coming across his desk. And I can't remember. I think it was that there was an IPS or something that you were working on. That, you guys were rolling out a new IPS, and we got into an argument over something. And it was one of those good arguments that we're just kind of having at each other. And you said to me that, hey, this is a great sales tool. And I shot back to you and said, so how many client meetings have you been in? And Josh says, well, none. I said, don't fucking talk to me, pardon my French.
Nope, you're fine.
About sales tools if you've never been in a client meeting. If you want to be in a client meeting, let me know and we'll set it up. And now, normally when I say that to somebody, it just like it's water off the back of a duck and nothing happens. But Josh is odd enough that he took it. Well, yeah, you're right. I haven't been in a meeting. I'm going to make that happen. So Josh, take up the story from that conversation to how you put yourself in a meeting, the lengths you went to get into a meeting.
Sure. So just to back up, my first job at Dundee at the time was in an operations role. I spent about a year in an operations role, moved into a more business building role where I was in a role as a part of a team supporting the different advisors and portfolio managers that Dundee Wealth at the time, which became Hollis Wealth, which became IA Private Wealth. Long story there, but supporting the different advisors that worked right across the country. So I had pretty good relationships after working there for several years with call it 200, 300, 400, 500 different advisors that we would help get various things done, kind of coach them on some of the aspects of their business that pertained to the investment programs that we were running. So that's how Colin and I got to know each other. As he said, there'd be time to time where they would need some help with something, and if it was something that I had built some expertise on, I would be there to help them out. So that was kind of verbatim exactly how it happened. It was in IPS, which stands for Investment Policy Statement in our world, and it's anybody who knows the financial services industry knows that it's document heavy and regulation heavy. And this is one of those documents that is pretty important to the client relationship for us. But most clients probably glaze over about one page into these documents. So for me to at the time call it something that an advisor or portfolio manager could use for marketing, that's why Colin laughed at me, because anytime anybody who's listening can know how much attention do you actually pay to a document that's put in front of you that you need to sign. It's basically a legal document, right? Nobody pays any attention to it. So sure enough, I did make an effort to get out to visit our colleague and one of the founding partners, Dan LeBlanc. And I was able to, so we have an office, as I mentioned to you, Celine, in Nelson, BC. I was able to align one of our conferences that we had that was going on in Kelowna with some time that Dan was out in Nelson, BC. And I decided to drive across a couple of mountain passes in the middle of February to go sit with Dan in client meetings for a few days. And that kind of was, again, bringing us a little bit closer to this marriage that we're in now, because I not only sat in meetings with Dan for a couple of days, but went for breakfast with him, went for dinner with him, had beers with him, and hung out with him for a few days. And I had known Colin and Dan fairly well over the years, but that got us a little bit closer and built a relationship a little bit more personally.
Was anything missing from that, Colin?
No. That's the next. I mean, the story keeps going, but I want to make sure that Josh rented a car and drove across 2 mountain passes just to come hang out
in February.
But it was based on a stupid ass challenge that I've thrown out to literally hundreds of people when I don't think they know what they're talking about. Like, I throw that challenge out regularly to people and say, you don't know what you're talking about. If you want to know, then put some effort into it. Josh is the 1% that actually, okay, I'm in. Yeah, I'll do that. And again, that's the first, like, oh shit, that sets them apart. It's not quite giving up a job as an accountant to become a life insurance salesman, but it's still remarkable, for the time and place. So yeah, I think that's a great story. It's not the final chapter, but I'll let you decide on how quickly you want us to keep telling the story. So this is your show.
Stay ahead of the game with our expert tips and strategies that will help your business thrive in a digital era. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
Listen, I love the story, so I am quite happy for it to continue. Although I would say the final chapter has yet to be written, so it's not really the final chapter.
True. Yeah.
More about getting to where you are today. And I do, before you continue, excuse me, I do just want to note, I love that in both of your stories to this point, there's such a clear emphasis on the importance of growth and taking risks and trying new things, which is, as I've said 100 times in the shows, so much of our audience is entrepreneurs, and that growth mindset, whatever you want to call it, and taking risks, calculated, albeit, like, don't just throw spaghetti at the wall and hope something sticks. Calculated risks. But so this story is a phenomenal example of those two things working together.
It gets better. We haven't even taken a chance yet. I mean,
I feel like driving over 2 mountain passes in February is kind of taking I'm just going to say.
Yeah, no.
It was very fortunate for me that it was sunny and this is miraculous. And I know this now from going back to Nelson multiple times in the winter to drive across from Kelowna to Nelson and not hit any inclement weather at that time of the year. Remarkable. So yeah. I don't know. The gods were shining on us. They wanted us to be here, Colin.
Yeah.
That's absolutely how it works. So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh and I haven't told this story together in a while. So again, memories get foggy and stuff. But so let me see if I get this next part right, Josh. You can correct me where I'm wrong. I think I have the essence right, but I may misalign some details. But one of my trips to Toronto, as I was doing at the time, Josh and I were going out for a beer, and I just thought we were going out for a beer. Josh looks at me and goes, "I'm in." "You're in what?" He goes, "I'm joining." "You're Like, to me, my memory, my head at that moment was, oh, this is out of the blue. It's awesome, but it's out of the blue. And I said, okay, because at the time, we had offices in Nova Scotia and British Columbia. We just purchased a business in British Columbia, and we're onboarding it, Dan, the other original partner, and myself. And Dan was in Powell River at the time. So after I said, okay, Josh, leave that with me. I called Dan and I said, Josh says he's in. Dan said, in what? I said, he wants to join. Oh, okay. So we don't have an office in Ontario. We weren't recruiting anybody, but the conversation was like, well, we'd be dumb not to hire him. We just have to figure something out. So Dan and I both decided, yeah, we're going to do this. No idea what this is. So then I went back to Josh and started having conversations. And it's like, okay, so what do you want to do? And Josh, God love you, he's a very methodical person. Like he's very organized in his thinking. So, he wanted a 5-year business plan. I said, 5 years ago, I wasn't a portfolio manager. Like, no, we don't do 5-year business plans. Well, I need something. Yeah, I get that. I completely respect that we should do something. Well, let's put together a 3-year business plan. So pulled out an Excel spreadsheet, copied and pasted it, ran some numbers across. There we go. There's the 3-year business plan. And Josh really wanted to be in, but didn't completely understand. It was completely foreign. So I only want to travel 1 week a quarter, I think was the initial comment. And all of a sudden it was like, yeah, no, we're going to give you whatever you want. And we kind of went with it. My Dan and I, again, did not have a job. We weren't advertising for anybody. We weren't shorthanded. This was just a really, really smart, quality person who demonstrated the kind of initiative that Josh had. Wants to join you. You say yes. Like you work the details out, but you say yes. And because of Josh's amazing reputation within the industry, the announcement went out to the firm that Josh was joining us. A bunch of people were pissed off about that. But an hour and 42 minutes later, I get a phone call from somebody in Ontario. Great, now you can buy my business. Who is this? And introduced themselves and say, oh yeah, I remember I maybe met you at a conference or something. And yeah, so our 3-year business plan lasted an hour and 42 minutes. I called Josh back and said, we now have an office in Burlington, and this is what we're doing. So again, even our 3-year business plan lasted an hour and 42 minutes. Not a fan of business plans, but that could be another question. So Josh, did I catch the essence of how that occurred? Or from your seat? No, do this from your seat.
Yeah.
How did that story roll out?
Well, I don't think I was nearly as presumptuous as you allude to. Like I didn't come in saying, well, hey, I'm in. You haven't offered me, we haven't even talked about a job. You haven't offered me a job, but hey, I'm going to join you guys. Like it didn't happen like that. I think there was some discussion about, hey, if you'd like to come to this side of the table, let us know. Right. And I had a couple, I personally had kind of felt like my corporate road was coming close to an end. Because I had done it for, I think by that time it was 6 or 7 years, and I'd kind of seen how that thing goes, and I was ready to step out of that zone a little bit to be more entrepreneurial in one way or the other. So I had a couple of things on the table, and ultimately, this did happen, and we did sit down for a beer at the Irish Embassy in Toronto. I distinctly remember it, and I did say I'm in, and it kind of went like that. Colin was caught off guard, like, "Oh, I didn't think we were quite here yet." So that is all, I think, fairly accurate from my recollection as well. But I mean, Colin's been very complimentary to me, but it wasn't an easy decision for me to leave a job that I quite liked still. But I had built relationships with a lot of different advisors and portfolio managers over that period of time. And so I think it's just as important for me to say that Colin and Dan, as I said, were two guys that I got to know pretty well. So on a personal level, I had a pretty good idea that this was going to be a good fit, just because of how we got along, and both very down to earth and thoughtful guys that I thought the relationship on a personal level would work very well. And then I think they were doing a lot of interesting things. I had seen them sort of push the envelope in terms of building a business in a very unconventional way, starting in Nova Scotia and all of a sudden ending up with offices in BC, basically unheard of, and thought, okay, here's something I can definitely help. I can definitely add some value. And we're doing something that's pretty cool. So it wasn't without a lot of forethought in mind that I made that I'm in decision. And yes, I did want a plan. I did want a plan, because I'm not quite as comfortable with Colin, I guess, jumping off the cliff into being a life insurance agent with, no safety net or anything like that. I needed to see something a little bit more tangible. But as Colin said, it didn't last very long before everything got torn off. And I guess the big thing for me was, if I'm making this move, I want to be a partner in this business. I don't want to be an employee in the business. That was the only thing that I really cared about in putting together a plan. It's like, I don't care really what it looks like for the next 2 months, but in the near term, I want to be I want to be a part of this, the whole thing, not just working for a paycheck from a different company. So that was part of my intention of getting some type of plan in place. Was, hey, I want there to be a clear path for this, and again, to Colin and Dan's credit, we put something in place. I think we said at the outset, hey, we want to have something in place where there's either a partnership opportunity on the table within 12 months or not, and we can go our separate ways. And I think it was 4 months later that that all came to fruition. So, everything's worked out very well.
That's good enough. You want to jump in and speak to the audience a little bit about being an entrepreneur, growing a business. One of the things I think sets us apart and continues to set us apart is we don't want to be closely held. Like we want all of the talented, amazing people we're attracting should participate meaningfully in the growth of the business. They're contributing to it. They should get a piece of it. And one of the mistakes I see happen a lot in the world is that a founder hangs on to their business and they're in their 70s. They still own 80% plus of the business, and then they're trying to find an exit strategy. You've thrown away a lot of good talent over the years by doing that. You don't have as much as you could have by very early on saying, who are the most talented and the most interesting, effective people I know? Well, they deserve a piece of this. So that is something that absolutely I stand behind. We continue to do today. That if you want truly most talented, committed people out there, they need to feel like they're part of something. And it's one of those ones. I didn't read it in a book. I didn't take a course. I didn't have a coach tell me. It just seemed innately obvious to me. Someone like Josh says, I want a piece. Shit, of course you do. Why would you come work with us if you didn't have a piece? It was one of those things that we hold out as a self-evident truth. Now, again, not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but if you're an entrepreneur and you want to attract some good talent, offering them a meaningful stake in the business, there's no substitute for that. I've watched many entrepreneurs make that mistake. Hold on to something very, very tightly, and some really, really good. I shouldn't complain too much because we get some really talented people from situations like that. So I changed my message. Yeah, please, like all you founders out there, hold on to everything and keep pissing off all the good talent. It's better for us.
Well, I think there's I hear that, and one of the lessons that stands out to me is that it's about meeting people where they're at, right? Like, I put my coach hat on, but the language applies in that there's wonderful talent who always want to be an employee because they want that feeling of safety. Yep. So if you can offer that to those people, that's a wonderful thing. They'll stick with you. And there's people like Josh who want to have some skin in the game. They're not just looking for that feeling of safety in that way. So if you can meet them where they're at, if they're upfront about it, then you get the best of both worlds. And I think that to me is a really important lesson. And which, in my world, I always say if you put people first, if you meet them where they're at and whatever that is, you will have the best people. You will have loyal people. It's when you are putting, I need to have all of the stake and I need to control everything or profit over everything. We have to meet all of these margins in this way. Profitability matters. Don't get me wrong. But then people are like, but then we don't matter.
But there's a correlation between those who want to have a stake and those who are going to behave in a way like they have a stake. So there's an absolute correlation there. That's very powerful. Now, again, some people would say it's like, well, you have to tie them up so they can't go anywhere. That's one of the stupidest things I ever hear. Is like, if somebody's unhappy, I don't want them to be tied to the firm. Like, they should be easy to walk to the door.
Yes.
So this whole concept of that you use this as a mechanism to tie people, that's a very negative way of framing it. We frame it as like, I want everybody to participate. And there's very easy mechanisms for those who decide to move on. I would call it, there's mechanisms for those who want to move on. Sure, we're not going to try to hold anybody up because, typical expression, never heard of a happy marriage breaking up. If people are unhappy, then the breakup should happen. So both of those things are true. Right? You're going to have a much bigger pie. Like, you can have 100% of a small pie or a much tinier percentage of a much bigger pie if you're smart and know what you're doing. But it involves giving up control, and that's the tough thing to do.
Especially for and I say this with love to all of the entrepreneurs out there, myself included, it's especially hard for people who are entrepreneurial because a lot of times they want to be entrepreneurs to have the control.
Yeah. And it's a self-awareness thing. And I've gone through an arc, Josh has gone through an arc as far as, initially you're doing the granular things that need to be done. But as things progress, if things are going to progress and as they progress, you can't be that person. You have to move upstream. Like you have to develop a bigger skill set. You have to walk away. And walking away from things means you're trusting somebody else to do them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to hire somebody to execute a policy manual, that's one person. Or just throwing it out there, hire a really smart, motivated person, and they may change the way that that's being done. But if they're a good quality person and you trust them, let them have at it. Because there could be, stop being so arrogant that we only know the right way of doing it. Somebody else can come in and do it differently as well or better.
Mm-hmm.
And stay in touch with it, make sure you're guiding it and accomplishing goals and all the rest of it. But come from a place of, like that. There's probably another way to do this, and that's okay. The world's not going to stop revolving if we make a small change in policy that at the end of the day gets us to the same spot.
It's a growth mindset. It's an aspect of a growth mindset, right? It's being open to the learning and the change. And
my favorite part is I live my life, all these labels get attached to things. Oh, okay, that's what we're going to call it.
Yep. Listen, I agree with you. And I use those labels because it's easier to do when I'm working with people and then there's familiarity. But yeah, that's just it. We attach labels to things. So I am curious, how long have you been working together formally at this point? And Josh, one of the things that you mentioned was that this was about doing things differently, right? Like I'm kind of paraphrasing, but leaving the traditional corporate world. And this was an opportunity. Colin and I forgot the other person's name. I'm so sorry. Dan?
Dan.
Yeah.
Got it. Colin, Dan were, approaching things and thinking of things differently. So what was that? And what was that? What was the appeal in that for you?
Yeah. So
Rapt audience.
Yes. To answer the question, the easy one first, started working with Colin, Dan, and the rest of the team September 2018. So, it's been 6.5 years or so now.
Of pure bliss, I imagine.
What's that?
Of pure bliss, I imagine.
Any entrepreneur that tells you it's pure bliss along the way, I think is full of it, right? So I think we all know that there's easier times than others. The relationship side of things has always been awesome, which I think is the most important part of it. But to say that I've enjoyed every single day in the last 6.5 years, big picture, yes, but small picture, some days have been tough.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should share with the audience that we actually lived together for most of the first month you were with us in a relatively small condo. And we're different personality types, Josh, when it comes to our personal lives. And we have different standards with how we hold ourselves. So yes, after living together for a month, there was some friction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I've spent more time in outside of work with Colin than probably anybody else aside from my wife over the last 6.5 years, if you can believe that. So,
Wow.
It's true, right, Colin?
Yeah.
Like how many we've
Yeah.
lived together for weeks at a time over that 6-year stretch. So it brings you pretty close. You guys, you get to know each other pretty well. But what were they doing differently? So first of all, as I said, people from Nova Scotia or an office in Nova Scotia buying an office in BC, that I don't think I've ever seen that happen. I don't know that it never has happened, but it's definitely extremely unusual, especially when you consider it's Nelson, BC, which isn't the easiest or most locatable place on the map. So that was unique. And I think highlighted their willingness to kind of step out of their comfort zone and step out of the normal track that would be doing things. And so for me, joining from Ontario, again, we didn't have any location in Ontario. We didn't even know on day one where I was going to work out of. So for me to get comfortable with something like that, to have seen them sort of take that type of location-based risk before, I think is encouraging. But then So as I mentioned before, I worked with a lot of different advisors, and you see elements of how they run their business, how they manage their team, the way that they interact with you as a person, or the back office as a person, or other members of your organization, or other colleagues, like other investment advisors and portfolio managers. So you get a bit of a sense for people's personality and ego or lack thereof. And if you're me, as Colin would call me, some young punk trying to join an established team or an established business, and wanting to make an imprint and be something in that business, if you're joining somebody whose ego is going to crowd you out of that business or not allow you to even enter the room, that's going to be a problem for somebody like me. So personality wise, as I've said a couple of times, I thought that there was likely to be a really good fit with Colin and Dan. And again, a growth mindset, you've mentioned it multiple times, but it's, I think, so important if you're going to build a long lasting and growing business to really want to push the envelope and learn new things and put yourself out there and be uncomfortable with, pushing the envelope a little bit. And they had demonstrated that too. And I had watched it happen for 5 or so years at that point. So I had a pretty good idea that type of thing would continue. So it's all those things and probably a whole bunch of other things, but that's it in a nutshell.
Join our thriving community of like-minded individuals who share a passion for success and innovation. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
Colin, I want to ask you a question because, as Josh mentioned, located in Nova Scotia, deciding to buy this business in BC. When I think of our audience, entrepreneurs who, that isn't typical. That is an unusual thing to do. There's inherent risk in that, especially now, blah, blah, blah.
Hey, just say it's stupid.
No, listen, it's clearly not. I cannot call it stupid. It's clearly not stupid. It's unusual. But I'm curious why. Sum it up with why. So, where did that come from?
This is a great story. I know this one. Go ahead, Colin.
So when you talk to many entrepreneurs on their path, they talk about there's a certain amount of skill and a certain amount of tenacity, and then there's a certain amount of luck. And you kind of need them all in proper percentages in order to have a success. So the mid-range version of the story, because this can be a longer story or shorter story, but the mid-range version of the story was Dan and I had made a leap. This is going with the change mindset. We had purchased a software package, and we were told we were the first retail advisors in Canada to purchase this package. It was about a $35,000 spend. But we're geeks. We like data. We like having all the data. And so we took a leap. Again, some would argue stupid, but we overspent our technology to get the software package. And I was having fun because there's lots of data. I like data. So that software vendor called up and said, hey, we have another advisor asking about this package. Would you take a call? Absolutely. I'll talk to anybody who is going down this road, because you never know who you're talking to or what's going on. So I got a call from a guy in Nelson, British Columbia. And we had a long conversation about what was going on. And then somewhere in the conversation, he said, too bad you weren't closer. And I said, why is that? Well, I'm trying to sell my business. And I said, oh, okay. So I gave him the name of somebody in Vancouver who I knew was purchasing businesses. I said, give this person a call and have a good time. Now, the other thing that was playing out, that we were having one of the worst winters that Halifax has seen in a decade. I had 13 feet of snow on my driveway. I was really close to just leaving my keys in the house and starting to walk south to find better weather. I was at wit's end. And this guy calls back and he's got his air conditioner running in the background. I said, just a second, I have to turn off my air conditioner. Motherfucker. Anyway, I was really angry about this. And, so that's percolating in the back of my head. But we're still having a conversation about other stuff. Anyway, so he calls me up like a month later and says, hey, it didn't work out. Would you still be interested in buying the business? And I'm thinking, BC, that's dumb. But I wrote it on a piece of paper and I put it in the corner of my desk and I kept looking at it. Air conditioner back. So it just sat there. It just percolated and didn't return the phone call. I'm sitting at my desk about a month later and the phone rings. I look down on the call display. It says, this is who's calling me. And I go, well, I'm sitting here. So I picked up the phone and I was in a mindset of, hey, BC, and again, it's a misnomer because Nelson isn't that much better than Halifax. But at that moment in time, that one data point, the climate was way better than Halifax.
May as well have been Hawaii at that point for you.
Exactly. So
Yep.
I was just motivated for a change. And this is where Dan gets a lot of credit, because Dan is another whole personality type that could be another whole podcast for you. But this isn't Dan's jam. This isn't normally, but Dan very much is a reflective thinker. And then when he decides to go along with something, he goes along. He's in. So somehow convinced him that, hey, let's go on a plane. I've never seen BC. So let's fly into Calgary, rent a car, drive through the Rockies, and go visit this guy. And we meet him, and for whatever reason, like this person I talked to over 30 other advisors, and what again, I wouldn't be good to tell the stories to how I got him to over the finish line to actually do this, because we didn't have a lot in common. But we were able to get a deal done. And we walked into Nelson, and he had a particular appetite for very aggressive gold mining stocks and very speculative stuff, which is nothing that we do. Like, we're very conservative in everything we do. And we were able to tell a story that the clients were very comfortable with, and we're able to execute on making happen. Along the way, I can remember the vivid scene, and you can edit this out if you need to, but I got a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning from our RVP because, well, he didn't understand time zones. So I'm sitting in my underwear on the deck of our hotel room, because Dan and I were sharing one hotel room, because back in the day, that's what you did, trying to convince him to lend us something like $700,000 as a down payment to buy this boat. And he was calling me out and calling me stupid. And what's wrong with you? And can't you do something closer? And I can't remember what I said to him. I can't remember how I described it, but I was able to convince him that, yes, this was a good thing. And he signed off on it. And they financed the down payment for us to make the purchase. But I was vividly looking at a beautiful mountain, BC, as the sun was coming up, very cold in my underwear. And that was the moment that we were able to actually close the financing side to get the deal started. There's a million other stories about all of the other challenges we went through to actually stick and land that deal. There was, one of the staff that was working in the office at the time was a part-time admin assistant who the advisor was telling us we needed to fire because she was lazy. She now owns part of the business and runs our administration team. So, we got in there with a different mindset. And there's an old expression: if you judge a dolphin's ability by its ability to climb a tree, dolphin's always going to disappoint. And the lesson there is that there's people who really thrive in the right environment, and you need to judge the people in that environment. So in this particular case, by changing the environment, the staff there became future owners of the business and big contributors. And that's what we tried, going back to the start of this whole story about attracting really good people. We feel that we've got an environment that attracts and rewards, and rewarding both personally and professionally, a really good group of people. Did I do a good enough version? Did I tell all the parts of the story that you like, Josh? Should I miss anything?
Well, yeah, and I think kind of what you emphasize there at the end is maybe a huge part, maybe the hugest part of our collective success, is that having the right people on the team in place is crucially important. Because if we didn't have the right team in Nelson or Powell River or wherever, that would not have been a successful transaction. And as you said, the people in that office have become an extremely integral part of our organization. And without them, we would be not nearly as successful as we've been.
Thank you for this conversation. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask one question of each of you, which is, if there was one thing, whether it's a lesson or a thought or takeaway, that you would like anyone who's listening or watching this to have top of mind, what would that be?
The first Josh?
One lesson for being an entrepreneur or building a business or whatever I want.
Whatever you want. It's open on purpose.
Yeah.
It can be a lesson. It can be a thought. It can be, what stands out to you.
Okay, Josh, I'll buy you some time. I'll give her mine. I thought you probably had something.
This is good partnership right there. That's what partnership is all about.
And again, I can't claim any high ground on making this a conscious decision. It's just who I am and who the founding members of this firm are. The biggest mistakes I watch entrepreneurs make is trying to maintain 100% of the control and not recognizing what it takes to attract other talented people. If you insist everybody do everything your way all the time around you, you're going to get frustrated that you got nobody there to really help you grow the business. So the key to success, the key to long-term success, the key to having the succession, the key to growing your idea to all it can be is knowing how to artfully give up control gradually in the right way, but still maintain the direction of your idea. And that has the best opportunity to attract the best talent and grow the overall pie. Now, it's insanely difficult. It's very risky, and you got to sit back and be able to accept other people failing around you or thinking they're failing around you, and sometimes going, "Oh shit, I thought they fucked that up. Oh no, that's way better than I would have done it." But so that's the biggest learning that I've taken, and the biggest power I think within our group is being willing to give up ownership and control of various aspects of what you're doing while still maintaining the direction of the overall business. And that's going to attract and keep the highest quality of people you can ever imagine.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm going to go almost way simpler than that and way more millennial. So sorry in advance, but because even though I'm like right in the middle of the millennial cohort, I don't think I really identify with most millennials, and Colin's shaking his head in agreement. But I just think it's so important if you're building a business to like the people that you're aligned with, and really like forget everything else. The fact that I enjoy coming to work with Colin and Dan and Steve and everybody else in the office here every day, and enjoy going for a beer with them or going to a social event with them or having their families over for dinner on the weekend or whatever it is, that I think gives the business a level of, I don't know what the right word is, but a commitment and a cohesion that you just can't get, in my mind, by strictly focusing on, well, let's grow the business or how do we optimize the profitability of this. The interpersonal relationships, maybe I think, are the most important thing that we've built here.
And you can't get there if everybody's trying to get as much as they can for themselves at the expense of others. Yep. If that's your mindset, you can't get. It's one of those ones that if you have what Josh is describing, that only happens in an environment where you're not trying to screw your partner. Yep. Like if it's not you can't have a business with a power struggle with people, competing to try to control or own something, and still have the relaxed personal relationship. So I think maybe what Josh is describing is more of a symptom of a really good company or something to aspire to. And the only way you're going to get there is by adopting a certain set of principles to run your business.
I could not agree more. Those are wonderful takeaways for the folks who are listening or watching this. So to find out more about Verecan, you can visit them online at Verecan, Verecan.com, or at maybe the world's best URL, annoyingthecompetition.com. And to the audience, thanks for listening to Canada's podcast. Like, comment, and subscribe to all our channels to get the latest podcasts from entrepreneurs across Canada. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Celine.